Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tech Talk with Sodhi. Well, it's not just another entrepreneurship show. Here, we don't just talk about innovations, but we also talk about the journey, the sacrifices, and the untold stories behind the headlines. Today, we have the honor of hosting Alex Kottoor, founder and CEO of Dana Growth, with a mission to revolutionize how startups approach market scaling and business growth. Alex has been instrumental in guiding early and growth stage founders towards sustainable success. Join us as we explore Alex's journey and uncover the challenges he overcame and extract invaluable lessons. Alex, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me, Karamdeep. Nice to be with you, brother.
It's a pleasure to have you as well. I know we only met very recently, but our previous conversation was very insightful. I really enjoyed understanding more about your background and more about you. But I think to kick things off, it'll be fair for our listeners to know a little bit about you and your journey till now.
So you want me to give you a little bit of background on me? Okay, so first and foremost, I'm Indian native. Actually, mom and dad are from Kerala. Well, actually, you and I shared this. What excites me about this opportunity is actually speaking to those in my motherland. And so thanks for the platform, first and foremost. I started my career as a tech sales guy. I was really fortunate to have found a great company, a company called CDW that was based in the Chicago area that really was like a phenomenal shop that helped me, discover myself as a sales guy, teach me what good looked like. And it's really where I learned what hard work looked like how hard the profession of sales is, especially if you're going to be a professional salesperson. And so that was like a super informative and transformative 7-8 years of where I started my career. Through that journey actually is where I met my first co-founder, Adrian. And he had a crazy idea to build a piece of software that would run natively on mobile devices. I mean, think about in 2000 and we're in 2010 now, the proliferation of mobile devices in our personal lives, let alone in the enterprise, was something that was just starting to happen. I remember those BlackBerries that we all used to carry around. And so Adrian had this idea of building an application that would run on those devices. And the long and skinny of it, I'm sure we'll dig in more later, is that was like our foray into starting our first SaaS company. It started off being called Siamese Systems. As we matured and, pivoted like a lot of good startups do and found our foothold in a specific part of a market that we ended up serving, the company became called SeamDoc. And again, we can dive into the use cases in the market we were serving later, but that was like a 8.5-year journey from sort of conception to being successfully acquired by a large public company based out of Dallas, Texas. And that was like, my first foray into entrepreneurship and this startup life. And since then, quite frankly, Karnadeep, I've been just addicted to helping early stage founders, quite frankly, not make the mistakes I've been making. That's kind of like the thesis of this new business that, I shouldn't say new. We've been at building Dana Growth now for about 2.5 years. And that business is squarely focused on helping early stage and growth stage founders scale efficiently and effectively.
It's absolutely interesting. And I think I also share that kind of obsession for the startup ecosystem. I'm very young in the whole space, but I think it's absolutely fascinating to understand how many different routes an entrepreneurial journey can take for different people, right? You've really dedicated to helping startups navigate the complexities of scaling their business from your own challenges and some of the few common pitfalls you must have observed among other early to growth stage founders. So how do you go about addressing these challenges for these founders?
The how, I guess, over the last 2.5 years has been a mixed bag. It's been everything from like serving as an interim CEO or an interim CRO as a chief revenue officer. And largely that's been either the predecessor didn't work out. And so like the board or the investors need somebody who had some experience that can come in and quickly stabilize things or to rebuild things from scratch so that there was a sound foundation to relaunch from. Honestly, the true passion work for me though is working with the earlier stage founders, the first time founders who are without the access they need to win in the game of startup. Like that really is my passion work. And so that sort of day-to-day advisory and mentorship to these types of founders has honestly been some of the most fulfilling work I've ever had to do, because it's so hard. Like you've been there, like as a first time founder, you're running blind for the most part. And yeah, there's a lot of information we can Google and hit perplexity with. And, AI has been another vantage point of like a mountain of information, but there's a difference between, as you know, like the mountain of information, and then what is the right information that I need to have at the right moment so that we can accelerate. That's the thing that really gets me moving, as you can probably tell already. That for me is like where I'm going to go and spend the next bunch of years of my life, is that sort of advisory work, access. How do we speed up the feedback loop around advice? Right? Because while there's a mountain of advice out there, we all have to be careful about who we're getting advice from and when. And then how do we speed that up? So again, we can build momentum and velocity in these early stage companies, because that's what, quite frankly, gets them moving.
Is there like a success story from your experience with the inner growth, specifically where your guidance resulted in significant growth?
So that's tough for me, because, maybe that's something that others should be answering on. Listen, I've been so blessed to have worked with 90 plus founders now over the last 24 months. Yeah, I've made my lion's share of mistakes. That's life, right? We're going to break things. I'm a big fan of breaking things. I try to get each of my founders to break things as quickly as they can, to learn from them, reflect on them, and move forward. There's certain themes that first-time founders and early stage founders, those pitfalls are kind of thematic. And so I can draw on several times where we've helped founders really hone in on who they are actually serving, right? I think one of the common pitfalls we have in startup is that because we dream big as founders, so we build big products, so we think everybody should be a customer. And so really like slowing the founders down to really be introspective and deliberate about where do we solve the biggest problem in the fastest amount of time, and where are our customers most likely to spend money to solve those problems. Like that's the kind of work over days, weeks, months that we try to instill in the founders. And we've done that a number of times. And quite frankly, like, it saves the company years and sometimes millions of dollars. And I'll speak for myself. That exact example was a mistake I made in my first SaaS company, SceneDoc. We had built a piece of software that would help police departments. And the basic use case of our software was, police officers all around the world today, when they need to write a report, they take out a pen and they have paper or they have forms and they got to do all that stuff manually. We automated all of that using a smartphone. Right. But the mistake we made, or the mistake I made, was thinking that every police department in the world should be our customer. And so what did Alex do? I made the quintessential error of thinking that, the Federal Police of India or the New York Police Department or the Los Angeles Police Department should be our first customers. And for us, that was a grave mistake, right? Because we didn't do that introspective, deliberate thinking I just mentioned about who should really be our customer and who could we repeatedly sell to in a really efficient way. And so we spent millions of dollars and years of time going after the whales in the world of our public safety market, when we should have been going after what we soon did do 3 or 4 years into our journey, which was we discovered that there was a real need that we could solve quickly downstream, down market, to the 90% of police departments in the world that are really small. And so that is kind of like an example of how do you go from serving this market to narrowing it and being hyper deliberate about staying true to that, serving that part of the market. I could count several dozens of companies to where we've had to slow down the founders, use this type of passion to kind of like wake them up that, listen, you can't go after this. We have to go after this. And then when they do that, we see a high degree of those startups and these founders who have been able to repeatedly sell their software like hotcakes. And then
Right.
what happens, Karamdeep, is that 2-3 quarters into doing that, they have 50 great, happy customers under their belt. They know exactly how to market to them, where to find them, how to message to them, how to sell to them, how to onboard them successfully. And now all of a sudden they can move from 50 customers to 500 customers a lot smarter, far more intelligently. And in doing that, it puts them in a position where they now have options, right? Which is what we're trying to do in startup. In startup, you shouldn't have to raise capital because you are trying to keep the lights on and you have payroll next Tuesday and you have $19 in the bank account. You should put yourself in a position where you can articulate a story of how you've turned 50 customers into happy ones and how you're going to go to 500. And then you have lineups of good investors who are also good human beings that want to invest in your business. And you are now in a power position because you have the option of saying, hey, do we want to bootstrap and sort of organically grow? Or do we want to throw gas on our fire and take in venture capital or take in angel investment and grow faster than we could organically? So that's
Right.
kind of like, I guess, one long-winded way of an example of how we've not just helped one company do that, we've helped a litany of companies do that.
It certainly gives a lot of clarity how efficiency should be seen in a startup space as well. It should be streamlined. But my question to you is, how should somebody approach as a first-time founder to understand, okay, I should actually not go out for, say, these 6 types of users or use cases of my business, but I should really focus on these particular 2. How does somebody even find out without investing their time and money into all 6?
I think it's a great question. And I'm going to distill a thought here around how we do it for the sake of the podcast and the time we have. But it is more complex than this. But the simplified version of this is, I always use the analogy that you have to grab a shovel as a founder and get into the trench. And in that trench are your prospective customers and your paying customers. In the early stages, maybe you don't have any paying customers yet. So how do we go and find our prospective customers? It is about staying in that trench as long as you can and speaking and learning and listening from enough variety of what you think is the market you serve. And if you do that in an iterative, consistent way, you start to learn where the problem is, what the impact of that problem is on that customer's business or life. And then you can start to prioritize where you're going to go and inject your solution as the medicine to solving for that pain, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, no,
how is you
does.
have to be meticulous and deliberate and spend huge amounts of time with those prospects, learning, asking tons of questions and learning. Like that's the thing I think a lot of founders just don't do. It's the hard work, but the most important work that you just have to
Sure.
do. You know, like I was on a call just last week. And I was asking this early stage founder who's in market with an MVP now. They have their first rendition of the product. And I said, how did you guys build this product? And he said, I've been working in this industry for the last 15 years of my life. I know this problem intimately. And what I did is, as I was building this, I went to my old manager who I used to work with for the last 15 years. And I asked him if what we were building was on track. That's not good enough. It's just not good enough. Are you building for one, or are you learning about the market you serve? If it's the latter, which is what it should be, you need to speak to the market. And that's not one person. That is different people in different sizes of organizations, in different geographies, perhaps, in different roles within those companies. If it's a B2B play, you have to experiment. And so I just don't think there's enough of that experiment happening. And that's the thing we try to drive our founders to really think about. You probably caught this in some of the content I write on LinkedIn. 80% of the time you spend as an early stage founder, I believe, should be in the trenches with your prospects, feverishly learning. And if you do that, you're going to be able to go from this big market to this narrow one and sell repeatedly and create a flywheel. Again, I'm simplifying it. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of things that have to happen in that continuum. But if people do that, I think they're far more likely to get to the flywheel and not have to wait the 3 or 4 years I did in my first rodeo.
I think law of averages is a must here. Like going out to more and more customers is absolutely a must for a lot of founders, is what I've also learned from being in this space, that people do not talk to enough customers. This is very insightful. And I do know it's got a very strong social impact. You're really out there to help founders. And I know that you also founded the Dana Scholarship Fund. My understanding was that it's aimed at empowering under-resourced students. But how do you really see technology playing a role in addressing these social inequalities, and what impact do you hope that initiatives like the Dana Scholarship Fund will have?
So quickly on the scholarship fund, it's still in its infant stages, although we've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. But the basic premise is there are so many people. I mean, think about just our homeland of India that come from these small villages like the ones my mom and dad grew up with in Kerala, India. And, the world is littered with these small villages. And there are a litany, a huge cohort, phenomenally smart individuals that just don't have access to the right education and the right mentorship and the right guidance, and are plagued with not having enough money, right? Resources in general. And so the basic mission of the fund is, and I wanted this to grow too, we're going to actually start interconnecting a whole bunch of our missions under this Dana group to tying back to how do we help those under-resourced students unleash what they're fully capable of doing. Let's part back for a second. The question you asked, the second question you asked around sort of the role of technology as it relates to these things. Well, there's some really macro level ones, which is technology, as we both know, this is nothing earth shattering, is a tremendous equalizer if we can access those technologies, right? I mean, just think about AI and where we are in 2024, right? I think it was Sam Altman the other day that was saying that him and a bunch of his tech CEO friends are in a WhatsApp group, and they're predicting in the month of some 2024 or 2025 timeline of the one person $1 billion company. When will that happen? Because it's going to happen. I mean, I see that already in my own business. Dana growth for the most part is me.
Right.
But I have a tremendous amount of automation and workflow and tooling that allows me to do more things. And I think that's going to be ubiquitous. That's going to be democratized and accessed for everybody, right? Through Google and OpenAI and these phenomenal companies that are popping up. And so there's that aspect of entering the arena that is going to, I think, just become more explosive than ever. Technology is going to provide, I think, the greatest key to the door that's been locked for a long, long time. And I think you're going to start to see that there's going to be people from all different walks of life that start to eat the lunch of people that are complacent. And so just because you're from Silicon Valley and you're building a company, no longer are you safe, because there could be 3 or 4 human beings in that village of Kerala that I talked about that's coming for their lunch. And I think they should lie awake at night, because technology is going to play a great role in helping those 4 individuals in Kerala come after the big guys. And so that's an exciting thing for me in startup, because, you and I talked about this. I'm a big fan of supporting the underdog.
Right.
And for me, the underdog is not Alex Kottoor, who grew up in Toronto with a great family. And generally speaking, I had access to good education and lots of love and, a community where there was a tech ecosystem. But there are swaths of founders around the world that don't have that access, and we're going to go out and give them that access. And so I look forward to this idea that tech is going to enable a whole slew of founders to disrupt.
There are so many founders that, you're absolutely right, do not have the resources. AI does really help a lot of people to be self-sufficient. But then there is also another flip side to it, that I think a lot of founders are also coming up because there is a certain sense of insecurity that their jobs might be lost in corporate scenarios, especially where AI is being integrated so quickly. a lot of people are worried. So maybe, a couple of people are working on the ideas that maybe we'll start a business. You did work for corporate entities as well, before you started with, ventures
and after my
and after. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So did you see any of those kind of lessons or insights from your corporate leadership roles that were proven to be invaluable in your journey as an entrepreneur and startup advisor? Do you think it really helps working for another big firm to understand business better?
Great question, by the way. This is another one that I can get super passionate about. I believe, I know there's going to be people who disagree with me, and that's fine. I believe that working in the construct of a big company is an invaluable lesson. So me working at CDW, which was a large public company, multi-billion-dollar company, it was a huge enabler for me as I became a first-time founder, first-time CEO, a first-time entrepreneur, right? In the, building a real software company. It was invaluable. I would never trade that experience. Yes, it taught me a lot about sales. It taught me a lot about go-to-market, but it taught a lot to me about what good business looks like, what leadership looks like, sometimes what bad leadership looks like. And
Right.
so those types of things fed into sort of my leadership signature as I showed up building SceneDoc as a first-time CEO. Yeah, I was far from perfect. I made, I could probably write 3 or 4 books on the mistakes I made. But Current Deep, I would never trade that away. And so I translate that to, I have a 13 and an 11-year-old at home. And as you can probably imagine in Alex Kottoor, we talk a lot about business. I mean, just because, it's something it's a sport I'm passionate about. And so ever since the kids were really young, we used to talk about business. But I always tell the kids, while I absolutely want you to build businesses, if that's something that you would like to pursue as you get older, I've always encouraged them to go inside the walls of a big corporate, get that experience, see what a big machine looks like, see how it operates, see how HR works, how the tech works, how people work, how do people problem solve, how does software or tech get engineered, how do people hire, how do people fire? All those things feed into your ability to build a startup. And then,
Right.
so then on top of that, if I kind of now extract to sort of what happened in Alex's life, first 7, 8 years went into big corporate, learning sales. Next 8 years went into building my first SaaS company. After we exited that company, I actually went to go serve as a CRO and a managing director for one of my mentors at a company called Andy. And then after that, I joined one of my other former board members who was serving as CEO at a video SaaS company, which was a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. That gave me another set of unique experiences of being a global sales leader in a public company and what that meant for Wall Street and having to deliver on numbers. And there's a whole set of complexities in that type of an environment. Honestly, all these things, I believe, have shaped my ability to be more effective as an advisor, as a consultant under this data growth business, because I'm now able to synthesize all these different experiences from startup to small business to medium business to large enterprise to private companies to public companies, and be able to bring that experience to these founders that I'm so privileged to serve.
I think this is something I can relate on a certain level too, because I did the same. I worked in sales for so long for the corporates. I tried to start a business. Whatever experience was thrown at me, I think the only thing that you can do, which is going to only benefit you as a person, is learning from it. That's about it. Not to dwell about it if it's in the past, but to really gain some insights and move forward to understand what kind of person you want to be as a leader, what kind of processes you want to integrate within your company. Because as you mentioned, you need to go into a big machine to see what you're envisioning is also a big machine at the end of it. So you need to see first
Right.
how others are working, and then you start with the first part, right? So that's very insightful, Alex. It's really exciting to talk to you. I'm going to go a little personal in terms of what was your biggest adversity that you faced during your entrepreneurship time? Any personal anecdote or instance where you thought that your resilience really played a defining role in overcoming a challenge in your entrepreneurial journey?
So here was my reality. So in 2010, when I decided to jump off the ledge, so to speak, to start SceneDoc, I was so privileged to have been a huge earner in the game of sales. I was one of the top sales people at CDW, not just gainfully employed, but honestly making more money than I had ever dreamt of as a little child, growing up in an Indian household. You know, stability was more important than anything else, right? Yeah, I would say that when we built SceneDoc, there was that moment of going from making money to making absolutely no money, but that's not where it ends. I tip my hat to my lovely wife, Sash, who was expecting our first child at the time. So when Adrian conceived of this idea that he had, Sash, I think, was 3 weeks away from birthing our first child, Cameron. And then when I decided to resign, I think Cameron was 2 or 3 months old. So like that was a really, really trying time. I mean, as you could probably imagine, there was nights of me vomiting, going to the bathroom secretively and vomiting because I was just so nervous about the position I was ultimately putting the family in because of something I wanted to do and pursue professionally. That played a huge, I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but it certainly played a huge role in stress. But on the flip side of that, dude, it was also the thing that drove me the most was like, I can't let this fail. It just has to work. And it's not always going to work. We know this. We live and learn. I think it's all worth it, by the way, even if you don't make it to the other side, because I think startup, well, just changes you forever to your inner core. Like it changes your behavior, your outlook about life, what's important, what hard work really is, what really matters, right? It kind of brings you back to the basics. And so anyway, that was probably one of the most personal, trying times for me, wrapping my head around the things that were happening at home and the realities of what we were building and bringing those two things together in such a way that they could coexist and me not like losing my marriage as a result of it.
Right.
That was an interesting thing. And, I honestly, I thank my wife for it still to this day. I don't know how she endured that journey because it was a roller coaster of a ride, but that was probably the most personally adverse thing. Now there's tons of professional ones. I don't know if you want to go there.
No, of course. I mean, the top one in professional as well. But before you get there, I think you find out so much about yourself, about the people around you, about when you hit rock bottom. And of course, in different parts of life, you hit a different kind of rock bottom. Sometimes you hit it so hard that you know that the only way is up. All you can see is up because there's nothing down there. I think that perspective gets internalized. That's what entrepreneurship is, such a wild journey.
Yeah.
That I think you learn so much from it. It just creates a character and it creates a different human being. I think it's one of the reasons why you fell in love with it. And I personally I'm getting more and more in love with this every day. So thanks a lot for sharing that.
It's not crawling through the mud. I mean, all my founders have heard this analogy from me. If you are able to crawl through the mud long enough, eventually you win in whatever format that looks like. It's like a pain tolerance. Like startup allows you to build pain tolerance. And so when SceneDoc that part of my life was done, and I went and served as a managing director at a growth stage company that, SVP of global sales at a public company. Can I tell you something? And I've told this to the CEOs that I work with. None of this is like that hard. None of it is that stressful. And so it allowed me actually to be far more cooler in those environments. Things that would have stressed me prior to starting SceneDoc were no longer stresses because I was like, that's not stressful. You know what's stressful is when you have 30 people that need to get paid on Tuesday and you quite frankly don't know if you can pay them on Tuesday. Or even worse than that is telling those 30 employees and the families that rely on them that, hey, listen, can you give me 2 weeks to pay you? That's hard. There's a pile of things that happen naturally in anybody's startup journey. It allows you to build perspective, generally speaking, business in a corporate, it pales in comparison to the stress you carry as a founder.
That's exactly why experiences are a stepping stone in anyone's mental health and personal battle and growth.
If you are able to do that, like that is like the level of growth that happens there is hard to describe.
Yeah,
You just have to have
completely agree.
gone through it, you know?
Right, right. So, Alex, it's been very interesting. Just as a closing kind of insight or wisdom that you can provide to the budding entrepreneurs or earlier growth state entrepreneurs, something that at the top of your list, the top 2 or 3 advices, it'll be great for them to hear this.
Here are 2 quick threads. First thread is be kind. It sounds so simple, but just be nice. And if you're nice over a long period of time, you're going to become magnetic, and magnetic people win. That's like the first thing is just, there's so many dicks around now that in those sea of dicks, if you could just like be kind and be nice, be genuine, you're going to attract everything that you deserve in life. I'm a firm believer of that, and I'm an example of that. I think most people would say that I care. I actually give a shit. And that has paid me in dividends, not just financial dividends, but all types of dividends. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I think is a lost one now is just hard work. You have to put in the work. So many people are looking for the shortcut and the hack, the thing that is going to get them to their perceived level of success. Without the hard work, you're not going to get there. I don't know, very rarely. Yeah, some people win the lottery, or some people just meet the person who some miraculous thing happens in their life that it changes it for the better. But for the most part, you just have to get into the trench. Remember where we started this conversation?
Yeah, exactly.
The shovel and jump in the trench and work your ass off. And again, if you work your ass off long enough, I tend to believe that things will work out. So those are things maybe I'll leave your community with.
Yeah, for me personally, it's very insightful too, because I try to do exactly those 2 things. I'm very stringent about these 2 things particularly, to be nice, to work hard, because it does pay off really well. Sometimes it compounds, and it's good to
That's
see
common.
what it compounds into. Yeah.
And I see you doing that from afar. I mean, in our interactions, I can confirm to you that that's what I observe about you too. So keep doing it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And now, I mean, Alex, this was a great conversation. It's come to an end. And as we bring the episode of Tech Talk to a close, I really want to extend a heartfelt thank you, Alex, for generously sharing your invaluable lessons, your experiences from personal to professional. I think it's been so great. And, just for the listeners, I hope all of you found Alex's journey as inspiring and enlightening as I did, because I definitely did. And in a dynamic world of startups, challenges are inevitable. So it's better to learn how to really respond to these challenges, and that really defines your success. And let Alex's journey serve as a beacon of inspiration as you navigate your own entrepreneurial path. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated on future conversations with trailblazers in the startup world like Alex, don't forget to subscribe Tech Talk with Sodhi on your preferred podcast platforms. All the link are going to be down there in the description. I'm also going to leave the Inner Growth's link in the description if you want to, in case, check out what they're up to, what they're doing. Alex really supports a lot of early stage founders with their journeys, and it's been successful so far, and I'm sure with the kind of experience he holds, there's going to be success for you too. All the listeners, all your support means the world to us, so we're always eager to hear your feedback and suggestions. So to Alex, thank you once again for your time, wisdom, and passion for innovation. It was undoubtedly it left an impact on me personally. Thank you so much.
That, if nothing more, that makes it all worth the time. And keep shining your light bright, man. And you have an awesome day. It was fun.
Thank you. You too. Absolutely. Likewise, it was fun for me. All right. And as we sign off, remember to keep dreaming big, keep pushing boundaries, and keep striving for excellence. Until next time, this is Sodhi bidding you farewell. Stay curious, stay inspired. See you on the next episode of Tech Talk. Thanks for joining in.